Knowing what feat to take for a caster can make all the difference. And you're in luck, because behind today's secret door, top 10 feats for casters. So behind today's Secret Door, top 10 feats for casters. This is Secret Door, a channel devoted to in-depth discussion about Dungeons and Dragons, and my name is Matt Morich. Before I get started on the list, I have started a new Patreon. The link will be in the pinned comment and in the description. Please give it a check if you're interested in supporting the channel. Now, before we get to the list itself, let me just give a little bit of idea of what my criteria was for this list. Some of the choices are razor thin margins. The delineation between 3 and 4 and 4 and 5, you can easily interpose them. So it is what I consider the priority, 1 through 10, but those can easily change based on what your table plays like and what kind of character build you're looking at. So nevertheless, these are the 10 best feats for casters, in my opinion. However, it doesn't consider things like, say, the lucky feat. It's a great feat. Lucky feat is great, and certainly casters might very well want to take it for a number of reasons. But the general feats that really don't apply to being a caster, I didn't consider for this list. So things like toughness, that type of thing, or lucky, aren't here. One of the other major considerations I had in making this list is that realistically, you're going to at most get to take 3 feats in your career, as most campaigns end by level 14. So if you're a variant human or custom lineage, you might be able to take 3 feats, but everybody else, you're probably going to get to take at most 2. So they better count. And in a lot of cases, one of those feats is going to have to be a half feat. A half feat is what the term I'm using is, I didn't make it up, where you get a stat increase and then another bonus from the feat itself. So half feats for human variant and for custom lineage are critical in jumpstarting them to get to an 18 early if you're using stat array or point buy. It allows you to get that 18 at level 1 with half feats. So there will be a lot of half feats on this list. Another criteria on this list is that I was, as much as possible, looking at things from a very general perspective of casters. So I don't have necessarily wizard focus or sorcerer focus or cleric focus, bard, blah, 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 blah. And I'm trying to take into account all of those in a kind of big picture. There's only, for example, 1 feat on this list that only a wizard would take, and there are a couple of feats that a wizard wouldn't take, but other classes would. So I'm trying to take in the whole picture of the D&D casting world. So at number 10, we have Keen Mind. Now, Keen Mind is a half feat. It only applies to intelligence, so this would really only apply to wizards, obviously artificers, but I don't really consider them casters. They're half casters. Its abilities are not as good, which is why it's not at number 10. But if you have a DM that is going to punish you not taking copious notes or paying rapt attention to everything that is said at the table at all times, Keen Mind can come in really, really handy in those kind of scenarios. And if you have a DM that is going to want to mess with your spell book and people like stealing your spell book or whatever, if your DM is like that at all, Keen Mind can be a great counter to that. So that's why it's at number 10. It's very situational, and it sits at number 10. At number 9, we have Moderately Armored. It is a half feat, but unfortunately that stat bump doesn't help your primary statistic. So moderately armored, while it is obviously good, any caster wants medium armor if they can get it, and shields, yes please. But when are you going to take it? A human variant or a custom might take it, but they would be doing at first level, but they would be doing that at the expense of a half feat that could be propelling them up to an 18. So that's why moderately armored is at number 9. And number 8, we have Spell Sniper. Now, Spell Sniper is one of these things that it was really hard to even know if I should put it on this list, because there are so many DMs that don't enforce range penalties or cover or anything like that, that it virtually makes Spell Sniper useless. But if your DM is enforcing these things, and say you're playing a Warlock with Eldritch Blast, then it becomes a very, very, I'm not going to say it's a must-have, because range penalties are not insurmountable, but it makes it very, very, very inviting. So Spell Sniper, for that reason, makes the number 8, and it could move up a little bit on the list if you're a Warlock with the DM that's following the rules, enforcing the rules, I should say, to be a little nicer about it, about cover and range penalties. Number 7, we have Shadow Touched. Shadow Touched is a great half feat. You get your choice of a first level spell from Necromancy or Illusion. The problem with that is that there are only so many spells from Necromancy and Illusion at first level that are going to be terribly interesting. But you get Invisibility. Invisibility is great. So Shadow Touched, while it's a great half feat, there are better ones out there. But if you really, really, really like Invisibility, and who doesn't, but if that's what your main draw is for, and you can deal with one of the other options from Necromancy or Illusion, then Shadow Touched is fine. Number 6, this is another half feat. Now, here's where we get into the stage where things get a little tricky. Number 6 could easily be transposed to number 5's place. Number 5 could easily be number 6. You could also put number 5 in a higher spot. So it really depends on how you use it and what you're going to be using it for. But number 6 on my list is Telekinetic. Telekinetic's shove action is fantastic for control casters that are going to have a ongoing AoE effect on the table. It can even be useful, of course, for casters that have an ongoing AoE damage effect, but typically you're going to find ongoing AoE control is what you're going to see there. So that shove effect could get them back into that area of effect, possibly. But that's very situational. And obviously the Mage Hand is very, very, very cool and very, very useful. But that too, how useful that is, in my opinion, is a bit situational. So that's why I have it ranked just under number 5. And what is number 5? Number 5 is Telepathic. Telepathics is, of course, another half feat, and the ability to broadcast and communicate is invaluable. Absolutely invaluable in D&D. Even though it's just one way, that's fine. That ability to reach out and be able to communicate in situations where you couldn't communicate, or it would just be really unwise to communicate, is always going to find a use. And then, of course, you get Detect Thoughts. And you don't just get Detect Thoughts, you get the ability to cast Detect Thoughts without components. You can only do this once a day, but how often are you going to need Detect Thoughts? And sure, Detect Thoughts only works with surface thoughts. But if you're interrogating someone and you want to know something beyond the surface thought, all you have to do is ask the question. That'll bring it up to the answer should come up to their surface thoughts, and there you go. Telepathic is fantastic. And as much as I like telekinetic, I think telepathic is just going to always be more useful, even though telekinetic is awfully darn good. But they could easily flip. And again, telepathic, in my opinion, could be even moved up to the number 4 spot. And the number 4 spot, Fey Touched. Fey Touched, another half feat. This is the last of them. Fey Touched. Oh, that's actually not true. It's not the last of them. Sorry, there is one more on the list. Fey Touched grants you an enchantment spell or a divination spell at first level. There's plenty to choose from. But just quickly, that would include things like Hunter's Mark, Hex, for if your character wanted to be dealing damage, or it could include something like Tasha's Hideous Laughter or Sleep. And that's just 4 standout spells. There are obviously others that you could pick from. But with those kind of choices, that can fit almost any character concept. So that flexibility is also great. Then, of course, you get Misty Step. Anybody can find a great use for Misty Step once a day. In combat utility and out of combat utility, Misty Step is fantastic. So for that reason, Fey Touched sits at number 4. And number 3 on the list, Warcaster. Now, Warcaster in certain build types could easily be number 2 or even number 1 if you had the right kind of build going on for it. So, but that's getting awfully nitty-gritty specific about certain things. In general, I would say Warcaster, it's obviously great. I have it at number 3. But unless you can really utilize that ability to cast a spell as an opportunity attack, meaning if your caster is going to be on the front lines virtually all the time, then you're going to reliably be able to use that all the time. And in which case, of course, Warcaster's value goes way up. But if you're not, if that's not the kind of caster you're going to play, then Warcaster is still a great choice for dealing with concentration saves, and that's why it sits at number 3, though it could be higher based on your build. And number 2 on the list is Resilient. Resilient is a half feat, and of course, for casters, we're looking at Constitution, of course, to deal with concentration saves. If that bump you're getting from Constitution is going to increase your stat to a round number, then it's a very efficient feat. You're getting extra hit points from it, and you're increasing your con saves altogether. And of course, the reason why I prefer it over Warcaster is that it applies to all con saves. And there are a lot of con saves in D&D. It lags in its absolute value to Warcaster at early levels in terms of how much value you're getting for the concentration saves, advantage being roughly about a +5. So you're not going to get the full value of it at early levels, but you are getting access to Constitution saves and not just concentration saves. That and the extra hit points and the increase in con, for me, is that razor difference between Resilient and Warcaster. It's very close, and if your build is such that can utilize Warcaster in the way I described earlier, then Warcaster should sit in this spot, or maybe even at number 1. And number 1, of course, if you've watched any of my videos dealing with casters, you probably could guess, is Alert. Going first is so important for just about any kind of spell you're going to cast, but particularly for controllers. If you're going to cast a control spell, I don't think I need to explain why going first is so important. But buffs are just as important that they go off quickly. Debuffs, just as important that they go off quickly. And damage, if you're talking about AoE damage spells, early in the initiative order is going to be your chance to get the best chance at the maximum number of targets because the two parties haven't engaged each other yet in melee. So you have the best chance of hitting more targets. More targets means more damage. That's number one. Number two is that by hitting them quickly like that, you are creating value targets for the rest of the party. So if you hit with Fireball, for example, whoever failed that save in the Fireball now becomes a value target for the rest of your party for Focus Fire, so that they can remove that target from the board quickly. So all the way around, Alert is great. And because both Resilient and Warcaster are passive feats, meaning they only are useful in general, the reason you're taking them is for a passive reason when you fail a concentration save. Alert is going to happen in every single combat, and it's going to provide that benefit every single combat. So for that reason, in my opinion, Alert stands alone. That's all I've got. That's the list. If you like the video, please like, please share, please subscribe. And if you're stuck and you don't know where to go, you can always search for a secret door. Until next time, I cast bless on all of you.